Meeting of Tuesday, February the 6th, 2024. Now, this meeting is being convened by electronic means as authorized under Part 14 of the Procedure Bylaw, the City of Vancouver electronic meetings. As such, council members and the public may participate in person or by electronic means. All right, we're going to skip that because everyone's in the chamber. Council members are reminded that in accordance with Section 14.13 of the Procedure Bylaw, oh, no, we can skip that as well. Okay, so in case of an emergency where we need to evacuate the building, I'd like to direct your attention to the exits. There's one through the glass doors there, and right by the post, you hang a left, and there will be some stairs there. And if that's blocked for any reason, please look at these 4 exits here. Walk, don't run, and please use the stairs, not the elevator. Might be a bad idea. I'd also like to highlight that we do have a defibrillator at the end of the hallway here, so if anyone feels like they need one, we will run there and we will get it as quickly as possible. I also want to acknowledge that we're hosting today's council meeting on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. And I do want to thank them for their generosity and their hospitality and the love and the care that they show this land that we get to live, work, and play on. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to unlearn what we've learned in the past and learn the true history as to what's happened on these lands. If we do that, we're going to build an incredibly bright future full of love and prosperity for all of us and going well beyond 7 generations out. What else is there? I also want to recognize our team at the City of Vancouver, and we get the opportunity to celebrate you every single time we give one of these, or every time we chat and council here. And we've had the benefit of working side by side with our team, and I can tell you, our team are amazing. They work incredibly hard. They do it with passion. They really care about our city, and just so proud to be working with you. So with that, can we please have a roll call?
Mayor Sim in the chair. Mayor has a leave of absence for council business from 11 till 3. Councillor Carr. Councillor Kirby-Young. Councillor Dominato. Councillor Bly. Councillor Boyle. Councillor Fry. Councillor Montague.
Present.
Councillor Klassen.
Present.
Councillor Meisner. And Councillor Zhou.
Present.
You have quorum, Mayor Sim.
Great, thank you very much. So before we get our meeting started, we are gathered here today to celebrate Black History Month. And since 2011, the city has dedicated this month to celebrating the rich history and achievements of Black and African diaspora communities while acknowledging the city's commitment to reconciliation and strengthening relationships amongst ongoing struggles against systemic discrimination. Now, I do want to share a personal story here, and I think some of you have heard it before. When my wife and I, bought a house, a little starter family house back in the day, it actually turned 100 years old back in 2023. And when we got our house, we borrowed the down payment. We got a lot of help from family and friends, so we're fortunate there. And when we finally got the deed to the house, our agent, she was horrified. She was embarrassed, and she was at a loss for words, and she handed it to us. And on that deed, and it still says it to this day, this property shall not be transferred to Negroes or Orientals. Yeah. And so I just wanted to share that story with you because, a lot of this, these are just words about systemic discrimination, but it's also built into our system, and there's actually evidence of it. And so, acknowledgements like this isn't just virtue signaling. It is incredibly important that we actually have these conversations so we can build that brighter future for everyone here today and for future generations, one full of love and kindness and acceptance and gratitude. So with that, if my fellow council members would like to join me, we do have a proclamation to actually read. Are we live here? Oh, we're live. Good morning, everyone. So one thing I do want to acknowledge is the mayor probably, yeah, please take pictures. We're all good. You guys can come up if you want. Like, we're all friends here. One thing I do want to state as well is the role of mayor probably gets way more credit than it deserves. I'm just one small part of a team. This is our team up here. And so, we're equal partners. And so with that, I'd love to have my partners here read this proclamation with me. So we will start with Becca.
So whereas the City of Vancouver has been celebrating Black History Month since 2011 by honoring the legacy of Black Canadians. We dedicate this month to celebrating the rich history and enduring achievements of Black and African diaspora communities in Vancouver and in Canada.
Okay, and whereas the City of Vancouver acknowledged that it is situated on the unceded traditional territory of Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh people.
And whereas the city recognizes the long historical relationship between Indigenous and Black and African diaspora communities in Canada since the early 1600s, over 2 centuries before the abolishment of slavery in 1834.
And whereas, as part of our commitment to becoming a city of reconciliation, we strive to strengthen relations between Indigenous, Black people, and people of mixed heritage amidst ongoing collective struggles of systemic discrimination, displacement, and colonization.
And whereas the city acknowledges the various ways the Black and African diaspora communities have shaped the cultural, economic, political, and social tapestry of our city since 1856, and similarly shaped the origins and ongoing fabric of Vancouver since it became a city in late 1886.
And whereas the UN General Assembly proclaimed 2015 to 2024 as the International Decade for People of African Descent, the City of Vancouver affirms the rights to recognition, justice, and development for Black people and people of African descent.
And whereas the city strives to strengthen the full and equitable participation in all aspects of city life of Black and African diaspora communities as it works to develop a draft multi-year action plan that addresses anti-Black racism and historic discrimination in Vancouver.
And whereas for this year's Black History Month, the City of Vancouver has partnered with the Black Business Association of BC to celebrate Black excellence by actively promoting and supporting Black-owned businesses in the city, of which there are many. This initiative aligns with economic well-being and prosperity priority number 1, outlined in the city's Addressing Anti-Black Racism and Historic Discrimination interim report from 2022.
So now, therefore, I, Ken Sim, the Mayor of the City of Vancouver, on behalf of all of us at City Council and the City of Vancouver and all their team members, do hereby proclaim the month of February 2024 as Black History Month in the City of Vancouver. Feel free to come up.
Great.
You guys want to
You want to come up?
Might take a picture now, or?
Yeah. Come up, guys.
Like the baby.
Yeah. Oh, while they're coming up, I just want to say thank you so much, Mayor Sim, for this acknowledgement from the city. It's important to us as a community to know that we have community and that we're all working on this together. Black businesses, we've had a tough go and a struggle. We're working hard as a community to build it, and with the city behind us, we are only striving to get better as a community and as a city.
and with such inclusive, with the look to be inclusive, I think that we're just going to be growing. Vancouver's going to thrive for it, and we're all going to be better for it. So it's really great to have our peers here with us today, the businesses here with us today. I hope everyone has an opportunity to review the videos that we created of the wonderful businesses, Tinty Beauty, Kula Foods, Calabash Bistro, and UEL. And yeah, thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Absolutely.
Yeah, you should go.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can finish. Yeah, we'll go. Yeah. Blue hand.
Great. And I'm looking forward to coming by some of the businesses.
That would be great.
Yeah.
They would appreciate that.
Yeah, no, would love that. We
And
have,
they're in close proximity as well.
okay, which for that, yeah. Okay, awesome. All right, we'll give 2 minutes. Bring it. My gavel? I can't believe I'm. Thanks. This is way too much fun. I don't think this is working. Oh, it's working for sure. I'm screaming at everyone online. All right. Sorry, everyone. Okay, sorry. That was way too much fun. I totally. You know, if we didn't have people waiting online here, we'd be here for another hour. Like the funnest council meeting ever. All right. So we'll keep driving on. So the plan for today, any comments on agenda items can be sent to council using the web form on the city's website. The link to that form will be posted on X at Van City Clerk. I also want to note the City of Vancouver's longstanding commitment to equity, diversity, and inclusion, including the utmost respect for all genders. I remind council that when addressing speakers and the city's team members, we will avoid using gendered honorifics and will instead refer to the person by first and last name, role, or title. Today we have 3 administrative items: in-camera motion, adoption of minutes and matters, adopted on consent. 4 reports and 4 referral reports, 6 bylaws, notice of council member motions, new business, and inquiries and other matters. So the plan for today is we will break at noon for lunch, followed by the in-camera meeting, return at 3 p.m. to continue to deal with the agenda, and if needed, recess at 5 p.m. for a dinner break and reconvene at 6 p.m. to complete the agenda. In camera, council is required to meet in camera later this week. The reasons and authority under the Vancouver Charter are listed in the updated agenda. Would someone like to move a motion to go in camera later this week? Thank you, Councillor Claassen. I think it was seconded by Councillor Dominato. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. The motion carries unanimously. Minutes. Minutes 1 are from the special council in camera on January the 15th, 2024. Would any, are there any corrections to the minutes? So would someone like to move a motion? Great. Councillor Bly, seconded by Councillor Joe. Thank you very much. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. The motion carries unanimously. Minutes 2 are from the Auditor General Committee on January the 16th, 2024. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Great. Thank you, Councillor Joe. Seconded by Councillor Kirby-Young. Thank you. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. The motion carries unanimously. Minutes 3 are from the council meeting on January the 23rd, 2024. Are there any corrections? No. Would someone like to move? Councillor Carr. Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Joe. Thank you very much. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. The motion carries unanimously. Minutes 4 are from the public hearing on January the 23rd and 30th, 2024. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Okay, would someone like to move adoption? Great. Councillor Meisner, seconded by Councillor Carr. Thank you. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. Carries. Minutes 5 are from the council meeting following the Standing Committee on Policy and Strategic Priorities on January the 24th, 2024. Are there any corrections to the minutes? Would someone like to move? Great. Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Meisner. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. Carries unanimously. Matters adopted on consent. Council will now consider matters adopted on consent. We have reports number 2, 3, and 4, and referral reports 1, 2, 3, and 4 on the consent agenda for council's consideration. We will hold report number 1 to hear an external presentation. Council may adopt the recommendations for reports 2, 3, and 4 and referral reports. Does that make sense? Sorry. Yes. Referral reports 1, 2, 3, and 4 on consent. Okay. Does anybody want to hold? No? Awesome. Okay. So it was moved by Councillor Dominato, seconded by Councillor Boyle. Sorry. Does any member wish to declare a conflict of interest on the consent items? No? Okay. Seconder. Wow, we're just rolling here. Okay, all those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. The motion carries unanimously. So now the following have been approved on consent. Report number 2, new lease for Canuck Place Children's Hospice, 1690 Matthews Avenue, Glen Bray Manor. Report number 3, 2024 Street Cleaning Grant Program. And report number 4, Auditor General Committee Recommendations Transmitter Report. Also, referral report number 1, CD-1 rezoning, 1065 Pacific Street. Referral report number 2, tools and incentives to encourage mass timber construction. Referral report number 3, miscellaneous amendments concerning various CD-1 bylaws. And referral report number 4, CD-1 rezoning 2108 to 2476 Cassiar Street, 2105 to 2394 Herman Drive, 3426 to 3476 East 5th Avenue, and 2105 to 2291 Skeena Street, Skeena Terrace. All right. Reports. Report number 1, urgent mental health and substance use service enhancement grants. Does any member wish to declare a conflict of interest on this item? No? Okay, so we now have the GM from ACCS, Margaret Whitkins, to introduce this item.
Great. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Margaret Whitkins, General Manager, Arts, Culture, and Community Services. Pleased to be here today. I'm joined by Jody Sider-Jones, Managing Director, Social Policy and Projects, as well as colleagues from Vancouver Coastal Health. Today, they are presenting an update on the initial November 2022 Council resolution enabling the requisitioning and hiring of 100 new police officers and 100 mental health nurses. To enable this direction, Council approved a grant in February 2023 to Vancouver Coastal Health that initiated Phase 1 of VCH's Urgent Mental Health and Substance Use Service Enhancements Program. Since Council approved this funding, VCH has made significant strides in adding new resources, taking a thoughtful and phased approach to ensure the program makes the most impact for our city. An interim report on the progress of Phase 1 was brought to Council on December 4th, 2023, and now VCH is here today providing a full update on the current status of the initiative. We also present a recommendation to Council for a grant to VCH to continue implementation of Phase 1 of this program. This initiative assists in providing supports for individuals facing more severe mental health issues, some of whom also grapple with substance use and are frequently unhoused or living in shelters, SROs, or supported housing. It is an important component of an integrated approach that aims to bolster Vancouver's frontline mental health response. I will now introduce Bonnie Wilson, Executive Director of Community Services, who will deliver the update on behalf of VCH. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I want to extend my thanks to Mayor, Council, and City staff for the opportunity to report on the progress of the Vancouver Inner City Urgent Mental Health and Substance Use Service Enhancements. Next slide, please. I do want to acknowledge that I know that there was a land acknowledgement at the beginning of Council, but I do want to acknowledge that Vancouver Coastal Health works and provides service on the land of the Coast Salish people, including the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh. Next slide. So this slide shows that we have a group of people that have come together, and I want to thank them and acknowledge the work that they've done to move the work forward. They've been involved in the initial stages of creating the framework, proposing the service designs, implementation, and in the evaluation. So our sincere thanks to all those who've been a part of this work. Next slide. What we're going to do today is I'm going to give a brief overview of the framework. For many of you, it'll be a refresher, a reminder of what the framework is, and then we'll give an update on the timeline. Next slide. All right, here we go. So in the next slide, we'll see that the groups that have come together have really identified some very key goals in the work that we wanted to do. We wanted to increase the capacity of the system to respond in a safe and health-focused and therapeutic way to people who are in or approaching mental health crisis. We also wanted to add services and improve services for earlier de-escalation to support both the individuals, but also the partners who are working with them. And really, both of these feed into the objective of reducing the incidence of police-only responses to mental health crises. The third goal or aim is really that we wanted to strengthen our Indigenous approach and improve the Indigenous client experiences, outcomes, and access within all of Vancouver Coastal Health's urgent mental health services. Next slide. So this is a bit of a colorful and busy slide, but we really did want to link in the problems and the opportunities that we had identified with the solutions that we've been working towards. So first, one of the first things that we noticed is that there were insufficient options for same-day, non-police mental health crisis response. So what we've done to address that is that we've created a new non-police crisis response team. And we will go into a lot more detail to give people an update on what's going on with each of these initiatives. The next thing that we noticed is that Vancouver Coastal Health has a long history of a CAR program, which is pairing up the Vancouver Police with mental health clinicians. And we've been doing this for many, many, many years. But what we noted is that we had one car on the road at any one time. And while that car was on the road, if additional crisis calls came in, they did not have the ability to respond. So our solution is to look at doubling the car capacity, both with the police FTE as well as Vancouver Coastal Health staff. The third issue or problem or opportunity that we saw is that urgent response services may not be as culturally safe or equity informed as they could be. So we have worked with the Vancouver Coastal Health Indigenous Health Team, as well as host nations, to really bolster our response in this area. We will be creating a new Indigenous crisis response team. We are looking at adding Indigenous representation on some of our Vancouver Coastal Health teams. And we've been engaging in an Indigenous, culturally safe, anti-racism, and equity approaches embedded into our third-party evaluation. The final thing is that we noticed that there was poor coordination, and we weren't necessarily ensuring that the right crisis response was showing up to the right call. So what we've done is we have embedded nurses within the VPD triage department that triages the 911 calls, and we're diverting mental health calls, and we're looking at sector-wide coordination amongst multiple partners. Next slide, please. While we're all on board and recognize that health needs should be addressed with a health response, we do appreciate that at times there does require a police presence in some mental health call situations. So there is legislation that dictates, supports, and encourages this. We have situations where police are asked to apprehend and transport people to designated facilities when assessment has deemed that they are at imminent risk to themselves or others. And we also have the provision where when somebody is recalled under the Mental Health Act, there is a requirement for police transportation of the individual to a physician for examination. I'm not going to go into details on this because I'm not the expert, but if somebody does have questions in the question period, we do have people who are here to answer any questions related to the legislation. And the other area where we do know that at times we do require a police presence is when there is imminent risk, when there's risk to the individual, risk to others, and at times there's actually been risk to healthcare professionals as well. And so despite our best efforts to intervene and de-escalate, at times we do need to require the support of the police. Next slide. So the proposed investments are coming in these three key areas of FTE, and that's our lingo for hiring staff into these positions. So we have the non-police mental health crisis response. We call it the moderate de-escalation team or mode, and I'm sure you can appreciate health folks love our acronyms and like to make catchy words out of acronyms, so we've done it here. We have moderate de-escalation. We also are dedicating some FTE to strengthening our Indigenous approaches to the urgent mental health services, both with the dedicated team and embedding FTE and individuals onto our partnership programs. And then we are dedicating FTE to increasing our capacity of the police partnership services. Next slide, please. Now we'll spend some time talking about the timelines and the implementation and where we're at. Next slide. Oh, I think, okay, so we'll go into this. So one of the teams that we are articulating that we're moving forward in is the Indigenous Crisis Response. And for that team, we are looking at a spring to summer implementation for that team. There's a lot of work that's going on to co-create and co-develop the service with the Vancouver First Nations and Aboriginal primary care networks, as well as representatives from the nations. As indicated, we're also looking at adding new staff positions to our assertive community treatment team, downtown community court, and Vancouver intensive supervision units. And we all are providing ongoing Indigenous cultural safety and anti-racism training to all of our staff. Next slide. And a new service that we have started, and something that we're quite excited about because we're getting some really interesting results, is embedding nurses into the triaging function with the VPD at the Operations Command Center. And with this service, we've been piloting this since June, and we've received a large volume of calls that have been diverted to the mental health clinicians to do some triaging. And we've actually been able to intervene in 54% of those calls, and they've either been diverted to a more appropriate non-police response or directly resolved by the nurse on the phone in the moment. We have some great examples of how that nurse was able to look up the person's medical history, know that they were attached to a community team, arrange for that team to go out the next day to visit them, all of which diverted a police response. They're also able to do some troubleshooting, problem solving, and de-escalation on the phone with individuals. So we're quite excited about the early results, and we want to continue to monitor and watch. But we do think that this is providing an appropriate response to the individuals who are receiving these interventions. And it's also allowing the police resources to be spared from having to go and respond to these calls. So this is something I think for us to continue to pay close attention to. Next slide. We've also added this mode, non-police mental health crisis response team. And this is an interdisciplinary team made up of nurses, social workers, care coordinators, and we will be adding peers and people with lived and living experience. And what they do is they provide same-day outreach to people in a mental health or substance use-related crisis. They de-escalate, they assess, they intervene, they connect people to services. They're able to work with that individual to come up with a plan for how they can most appropriately deal with the issues that they're facing. They're getting their referrals from housing providers, shelter providers, and community services, currently mostly focused on the inner city. And we are, our hours of operation right now are Monday to Friday, but we are really hoping to look to see if we can expand both the hours of operation as well as looking at expanding the geography that this team is supporting. Next slide. I mentioned we've also doubled the car service. So again, that's the pairing up of the Vancouver Police with a health care provider, most typically a mental health nurse. That's been relatively new. It just was implemented in December, so we don't have any new data or can show any expansion of that service just yet. But again, that's something for us to look at. And I'll say this is something that for a number of years, our community has been asking whether or not we can implement. And this opportunity has allowed us to meet that need. So we are, not only our VCH, very appreciative of that, but I know that the community is as well. Next slide. So this talks about the recruitment of the FTEs, and I know we get asked about this quite a bit, and why haven't we hired all the people yet? So this indicates in the light green, these are the FTE that we have hired. In the blue, these are the FTE that are in process, and then in the yellowish orange, those are the positions that are yet to be recruited into. And what we're doing is we're implementing a phased approach with the hiring. And this is really a standard that we do use within the health system. And there's a couple of reasons why it's important. One is we do want to gradually ramp up and phase the implementation. We want to work through all the kinks. We want to make sure that we've got really good workflows and the partnerships. And it's easier to do that when you start on a smaller scale and then phase up. And the other thing is it's just the reality of recruitment. If you posted 50 positions all at once, you're still only going to get 10 applicants for those 50 positions. So you might as well post them in batches and hire in batches, which is what we're doing. Next slide. So the next couple of slides look at the finances and the expenses. So in 2023, these are the expenses and the amount of the grant that was utilized by Vancouver Coastal Health. So just over $600,000 was used in 2023. Next slide. And here's the forecast for 2024. So while the overall budget, I believe, is $7.9 million, because of our phased approach for 2024, we aren't anticipating using the entire amount. We're anticipating that we will be using $6.85 million. And so because we have some unutilized funds from the 2023 grant, we are asking for a grant of $4.67 million to cover the remainder of what we're anticipating spending in 2024. Next slide. So that's the summary. That's where we're at with implementation. Again, I want to thank you for the grant. Thank you for inviting us to provide you with an update. And we are here to answer any questions. Both myself, we have quite a team behind me, and I'm more than happy to hand things over to them if there are questions that I feel that they can more appropriately answer.
Great. Well, thank you very much. That was a great presentation, and thank you for all of the work that all of you have done on this. So, Council, you have 5 minutes to ask questions to the Vancouver Coastal Health team members. And wow, I'm not surprised. There are a lot of questions. So, Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation. I'm super excited about this. It's, I think, been a long time coming and certainly responsive to what we heard from the community. I do have a few questions. You touched on the de-escalation teams and sort of ramping those up, expanding the hours in geography. You mentioned focusing currently on the inner city, but are you serving, through those de-escalation teams, are you serving other parts of the city at this time? And can you give us a sense of what neighborhoods those are and what that looks like?
At this time, we are just focusing on the inner city. And part of the reason is because of the partnerships and who we're getting the calls from. We're really working closely with housing providers and shelter providers. And so that's the focus at this time. But we are hoping to be able to expand once we have the teams expanded, as well as that we have the workflows and the referral processes in place.
Okay, great. Thank you. And just, you noted the sort of the phased approach and the progress on the hiring. Can you speak to what maybe some of the barriers or challenges have been around hiring, and what is optimal from your perspective? Is this an optimal number composition that you have in terms of 58 FTE or working towards that? But what have been some of the challenges and barriers?
Yeah, I don't think we're necessarily experiencing challenges or barriers. I think this is a fairly typical ramp up, a typical phase and hiring process. I think anytime that you're creating a new service and you're recruiting into that new service, people want to understand what it is, what does it look like, how is it like something else? And so I think we're not concerned about the pace at all. And I think once we have this well-established core, it starts to grow, and the excitement around it and the interest to come and work on that team. So we feel that we're in a good place. We don't feel that there are extensive barriers. I think that with the Indigenous crisis response, unfortunately, someone from our Indigenous health team was not able to be here, but what they've indicated is they are going through a very, very thoughtful process with the First Nations, and there's a considerable amount of engagement and co-creation that's happening. And so this is a very appropriate timeline for them, and are wanting to be very, very inclusive in that co-creation of the service.
That's great. Thank you. I was going to ask about the Operations Command Center and the diversion of calls, but you highlighted that. I noted in the report that there is an evaluation component of this work. How long will that evaluation be underway, and what can we expect? How will that serve the City of Vancouver, but more broadly, provincial conversations?
That's great. Yeah. So I'm going to invite my colleague, Caitlin Etherington, to come and speak to the evaluation.
Thank you.
Hi, Caitlin Etherington. I work for Vancouver Coastal Health. I'm a director in homelessness response and supported housing. So the evaluation, we are expecting to have some initial results later on this calendar year. We're still just building the framework around that. And I think people are going to be very interested provincially in what we're finding relating to the OCC triaging that's happening. But the evaluation is a little bit different from monitoring, like ongoing monitoring and reporting. And so we can include some stats related to that work in our quarterly reporting back to the city. We don't have to wait for the evaluation.
Okay, that's great. I'm just checking on time. How much time do I have?
You have another minute and 45 seconds or 15 seconds.
I think I'm going to pause there. There's lots of people on the queue for questions, so thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thank you very much for the presentation. I know this is a developing program, and so it's really interesting to see the thinking that's bringing this along. So we originally said 100 nurses, and you're taking that Indigenous-centered wellness approach. I know it's early days, and you've shown some early results, such as diverting 54% of calls by embedding nurses at VPD. I'm wondering if you anticipate the opportunity or interest from the province in if we continue to see positive results like this, and as you bring on the Indigenous-centered components that you're taking sort of due care and time with, an opportunity for the province to expand this model into other municipalities across BC.
I think that's always our hope, and we've often been that incubator municipality for the province. So I know there is great interest at the provincial level about what we're doing. We've been sharing everything along the way, both our plans, our framework, the proposals, the implementation, and we'll definitely be sharing the results. As Caitlin said, not just about the final evaluation, but as we're going along, any of the results that we're seeing, and I do anticipate that there'll be interest at a provincial level, but probably other municipalities as well and other health authorities will be very interested in what we're doing here.
Okay, that's great to know. That's great to know in terms of someone has to go first, right?
Yep.
In terms of taking that ground. I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit on the strengthening Indigenous approaches work. I know that our Indigenous individuals are sort of 2% of the population, but overrepresented in both policing and health crises and mental health issues. So can you talk a little bit about, as we often get comments, well, the police officers were hired up and it's taking longer than mental health. Can you talk a bit more about the Indigenous approaches and give us a bit more perspective and insight into that and why you're taking the time with that and what it looks like?
So what I'm going to do is, because someone from the team was not able to be here, I'm going to read some information that they've provided because I'm quite sensitive to not misrepresent anything from their work. Okay, so how we frame this is important. This is not a delay. This is simply how long it takes to do this work using an Indigenous health system transformation approach. The outcome of a jurisdictional scan completed in the spring of 2023 determined every single Indigenous-led crisis response team in an Indigenous community-led or Indigenous community-based program. What we are attempting to do here in VCH has never been done before in any health authority in the province of BC or nationally across Canada. With that comes a number of logistical challenges in marrying Indigenous approaches, which are inherently community-based and self-determined, with the current system of BC healthcare. Engagement with Indigenous stakeholders, inclusive of the host nations, began in the summer of 2023, with the outcome of that engagement being the development of a working group. This working group is comprised of representatives from urban, First Nations, and Aboriginal primary care networks, and Musqueam Squamish Nation health representation to co-develop this new program and service.
Okay, thank you. And is that statement attributable to the groups that you referenced, or just to clarify who, like you said you were reading that piece, I'm just clarifying who that's attributed to?
Vancouver Coastal Health has an Indigenous health team.
Okay.
So it is one of the representatives, one of the directors from that team who prepared that written statement.
Okay, great. And I guess my last question, my last minutes, do you feel that you have everything you need from this council at this point with the funding and kind of putting trust in the direction that VCH is finding that? Or is there any sort of further support or shaping from council that would be helpful?
I'm happy to answer that. And just if anyone wants to say something, they can jump in. I think that we've received incredible support from council. I think this grant is groundbreaking, and the partnership has been really quite wonderful, both with council and city staff and the Vancouver Police Department. So we feel very supported. We feel that we have what we need to go ahead. We have good, solid direction and vision, and also the trust and the flexibility to do what we felt was the appropriate response and with the resources that we've been provided. So I feel at a high level, we do feel that we have what we need. I will just take a look behind me just to make sure I'm not getting any different looks. We're all good? Okay, yeah, got the thumbs up from my boss. Yep.
Okay, thanks for that. And I guess my last question is just to hopefully that you can come back and continue to provide regular updates as this develops. Thank you.
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much. Right on time. Councillor Meisner.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks for the presentation and the update. There's lots of public interest in the work that you're doing, and I'm so happy to hear that you're feeling supported by council, and that you also have the flexibility to have the best approach, being the experts in the field. Just wondering if you could elaborate a little bit on the intervention for if you encounter someone who's in a substance use crisis. Just curious what that intervention would look like for someone with a substance use disorder, say in a doorway, for example, of a business, etc.
Yeah, Caitlin or Saad?
Kind of thinking about somebody who's in a substance use psychosis kind of state.
Yeah, I'm just want to get a better sense of what that intervention from your team would look like.
Sure, and I'll do my best. I'm not a frontline clinician by any means, but I think we've put a lot of thought into who we're hiring. One thing I was going to add to what Bonnie said earlier, just in terms of what have the barriers been in terms of hiring, the only thing I would add there is it's just so critical to have the right humans and not just the right kind of clinical designation. And so we have been very picky about who we've been hiring. And so I think first and foremost, what the moderate de-escalation team is doing is taking a relational approach and really trying to engage with that person, depending on where they're at with what's going on for them in terms of if they are kind of in a more psychotic state. It can be really obviously very difficult to engage meaningfully, but they are able to. So we're really looking to engage that person and de-escalate as much as we can, but you're also simultaneously doing a bit of a risk assessment. So far, the team, I think, has only called Car 8788 twice. Can't remember how many calls they've done, but a number of, multiple, like over 100 calls. So rarely they will have to call 8788 for backup because they feel like it's more than what they can do. But mostly they're just engaging with that person, trying to get them to calm down, building a care plan with the people around them. So in a doorway, it's one thing. Mostly our calls would be related to shelter or housing providers. So they'd support the staff there to develop a safety plan around that person. And then they'd be checking back in the next day and trying to do more proactive work, just engaging them to care or the right kind of physician support or medical support. Does that give you a sense?
Yeah, a bit. I'm just wondering, are they connecting them to, say, Road to Recovery or the RAC clinic at St. Paul's? I know there's limited spaces for them to go, but I'm just...
They would definitely be doing what we're calling intensive bridging.
Okay.
So they're working very closely looking at what's going on for this individual. It could be kind of primary care needs. It could be addiction treatment if they're open to that at that time. So there's a number of different services that they could be attaching them to, including addiction recovery services.
Okay, that's
Yeah,
great
for
to
sure.
hear. Okay, thank
Anything any of my physician colleagues want to add? Oh, Saad's going to come up and speak to it as well.
Hi, Saad Ahmed. I'm the Medical Director of Homelessness and Supported Housing, and Caitlin's medical dyad counterpart. So just to get a little bit granular in terms of the questions that you're having, If we encounter, so there is a physician who is on call for the moderate de-escalation team. And when we get calls from shelter partners or SRO partners, depending on what the physician's risk assessment is, there could be a titration of the person's medication. So let's say they're on opiate agonist treatment for opiate use disorder, or let's say they are in a bit of a psychotic state from stimulant abuse. They could actually titrate antipsychotics. If the person is thought to be actually at risk of harm to themselves, currently in terms of the pilot, the physician has actually put the patient on a Form 4 as well, based on a risk assessment.
What's the Form 4?
That is where they have to be transported to a hospital and see a psychiatrist to determine whether they need to be admitted.
Okay. Okay, so that's all part of the intervention.
That's all part of the intervention, and we have physician support to do that.
Great, thank you. Just because I have limited time, appreciate that. The other question was, I saw the 54% of calls that are being diverted to mental health clinicians, or a non-police response, and that's awesome. I mean, that just shows the impact of this investment, and I'm so happy to hear that number. What would have happened before? They would have went to CAR 87, CAR 88. Was that the only option? I just want to get a sense of how different things are now.
My understanding is patrol would have been dispatched.
Okay, so police response. Okay, so this is obviously having a huge impact.
Huge impact.
Okay, that's fantastic to hear. Okay, thanks very much. I'm at time.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Also want to echo the appreciation for the amazing work. So it's so excited to see this initiative moving forward in 2024. Okay, my question, I think, is also related to the Councilor Dominado's question regarding the evaluation plan. So I thought there are $100,000 included in the performance measurement and evaluation. So can you just give us a sense of what exactly we need to measure and evaluate, a list of KPIs, some examples?
I'll pass it back to Caitlin.
Mm-hmm.
We can provide that later.
Yeah, so currently we're just developing the evaluation framework with this third-party evaluator. There is definitely a qualitative component to what we want to measure. So we are going to have evaluators embedded in these teams. They're starting with 87, 88 because that's the team that already exists and is kind of more grounded in what it does. And so there's this qualitative component about, we've named some pretty kind of equity-based goals for these teams. We really wanted to take that approach of understanding how are these teams supporting people who currently maybe weren't best served by some of our clinical services, for sure our mental health and substance use crisis response services. And so there's that qualitative part, but then there'll also be a quantitative part where we're just looking at how many more people are we responding to, with this increase of services, and how are people being diverted and from where? So some of the questions you've asked before. And then I think we're really hoping we can get to this place in the evaluation where we can kind of say, and then what happened to that individual? Like really look at some journeys and how they were altered by having these newer enhanced services there. So does that give you enough of a flavor? I don't have KPIs kind of off the top of my head.
So I guess my question is, there will be some evaluation from the systematic perspective, right? So like, for instance, what will be the reduction for the emergency visits? Or what will be the impact of reduction for acute length of stay? So I'm just thinking about from a healthcare system perspective.
Yeah.
There'll be some indicator evaluate that. So at the end of the day, we would like to see a saving for the whole healthcare system because of this initiative. Would you evaluate something like that as well?
Yeah, I don't want to say for sure we are because I have to go back and look, but for sure we should take that idea and talk about it at our valuation table for sure.
Yeah, I'm very keen to see that because
Wonderful,
we want to demonstrate the saving for the healthcare system.
Yeah,
Okay.
and other systems as well, I would say.
Absolutely.
We should see them across the police system as well.
Yeah, okay, so the other question is, I saw there are $200,000 included for the community engagement. So I think, as we all know, there is still some misunderstanding or misinformation, maybe sometimes intentionally, on the community, especially on the social media. So what is our plan to do more public engagement, make sure that people understand the correct information?
We do have in the appendices, there is a list of the people that we have been and are continuing to engage with around the work. So it's quite an extensive list. And I do think that opportunities like today and any opportunities that might come forward with any releases through media, that would be another opportunity for us to explain to people the work that's happening and the good work. I know that we are keen at some point to be able to go and share when the timing is right. For now, we're engaging with targeted groups within our community engagement model.
Okay, so those partnerships, they are very good. So are we planning to do some engagement or communication on social media as well?
Potentially, yeah. I mean, we need to work through the process to a place where we have enough experience, enough data, enough information where we feel that there's something that we can be sharing. So we're just taking our time with that, not rushing it necessarily, and waiting until we have the fulsome story that we can share.
Okay, one more last questions about evaluation as well. So there are 16.5 FTE have been hired already. That's 28%. Have we done any initial assessment for this 16.5 FTE? What will be the impact for the hire so far?
We have not done an evaluation of that so far. It's too early to do an evaluation at this point, I would say.
Okay, thank you. That's all my question. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bly.
Thanks very much, Mayor, and thanks so much for the presentation and being here today, and just echoing the sort of positive support for what work has been done so far. So just really continuing on from a number of questions, I'm curious about this 54% and the focus on the inner city. Can you just clarify very quickly what makes up the inner city, just in terms of areas? Because we don't often, in our sort of zoning and conversations, don't necessarily say the inner city. So could you just say, is it Chinatown, downtown east side? Where is it?
I'll comment on two things because I think they refer to two different things. So the 54% reduction in the calls was related to the call center triaging.
Sorry, I shouldn't have said that. That's my second question.
Okay.
Let me just focus on the inner city. Just what are those areas?
You have to go to the mic.
That's really looking at the Granville Strip, over to downtown east side, Chinatown, over to into kind of East Van around Commercial Drive type of area. So we're really trying to be inclusive of all shelters and supportive housing. So there's some sites along Kingsway. There's a shelter over at Terminal and First, and those are all in scope because of the type of service they deliver.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. So that does lead me to my next question, that if somebody was to call in a mental health crisis outside of these areas, not at a supportive housing or shelter or something like that, what happens?
There's a variety of interventions, so depending on the call.
Is it more traditional response, or does it fall into this category? This sort of new emerging support.
Yeah, so what I would say is, because we're addressing this on multiple levels, so one is that it might be handled by the triage nurse on the call with an approach, either de-escalating, resolving right on the phone, right in the moment, or sending out the car. So car 8788 may go out to respond.
So just to clarify, outside of the inner city, a call coming from somewhere else will still sort of be approached or addressed with a similar approach. Okay.
Yes.
So in that, do you have like 100% of those calls, are they able to be met with this program as it is staffed and funded right now? Or are other calls sort of needing to go elsewhere because you're limited in resources?
I think that's a really challenging question, and I'm gonna try to answer it, Fiona, but I wouldn't mind if you jump in, because really that is, like, the calls that come in, I think that you're talking about the calls that might come in through 911, get triaged that way. And so I think that there are definitely calls that are not coming to these services. We aren't able to staff at this point. Again, we're in a pilot phase. We don't staff 24/7 with the operations center calls. So there are calls that are continuing to go through the traditional route. And again, we've just doubled the car. So we're still kind of seeing, are we able to meet the demand of the calls that are coming through for the car? Because that's a relatively new addition. So Fiona, do you have anything to add?
And I just have a couple more questions. Actually, can I pause that? That's helpful, and I can reach out for more information on that sort of level of detail. Is that all right? Okay. It's been noted that this has never been done before. It's groundbreaking. These are sort of just general comments to others' questions. Would you say that this is an unprecedented investment by a municipality in the mental health crisis?
I don't feel I can comment on that. I haven't looked into it to that extent.
Okay. So from Vancouver Coastal Health's perspective, have you ever seen this level of commitment and investment in these services from the City of Vancouver?
I have not.
Okay.
No.
What do you, I mean, I think it's important for us to recognize that that this funding is coming through operating grants, right? At the City of Vancouver funded operating grants. And so ideally, we start to build out this program such that it becomes sort of undeniable for the Ministry of Health to be able to then fund it. Like this
Proof of concept.
Proof of concept, right? So what do you expect in terms of, I'm going to ask you a really tough question. How long is that going to take?
I'm going to defer to my boss. Yeah. So,
Perfect.
yeah.
Hi, everyone. I'm Bob Chapman, the Vice President for Vancouver Community for Vancouver Coastal Health. Nice to see you all again, and thank you for having us today. That question's come up a lot from some of you and from ourselves as well. I think it's important to remember that when this decision was made and the program was launched, the Ministry of Health and the Ministry of Mental Health and Substance Use have been at the table as part of the partnership here. So they are very involved behind the scenes, keeping an eye on what's happening here. We are sharing regularly with the Minister Whiteside, Minister of Mental Health and Substance Use, the results and where we're at around our progress. The reports are going to them. So there's a lot of conversation happening with the ministry. You also may be aware that the province has taken a step to fund a number of CAR programs in other municipalities across the province. I do think there's a shift happening.
I'm sorry, yeah, we're well over.
Okay.
We wanted to hear it, so I'll give you 30 seconds of my time. Councillor Clausen.
I may go in a similar vein, but Mayor, can I move for a second round? I just feel like we've got a lot of questions here and maybe not quite enough time. Thank you.
All in favor?
Thank you. I'm going to come back to you, Bob, just to maybe talk a bit more about the broader kind of provincial perspective. And I first of all do want to acknowledge that since we had Premier Eby be a part of a joint announcement on this one, I've been extraordinarily appreciative of all the work of Coastal Health. CEO Eliopoulos and your leadership team have been fantastic on this. I'm just noting the work that's being done on the Indigenous response and sort of creating culturally safe programs. Are we doing that for other sort of languages or potential diasporas as well that might be out in the community and needing this support?
Are you talking specifically for this response, or are you talking about
for this program itself? Like, are we able to we have a lot of very diverse communities here?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we are applying our equity, diversity, and inclusion lens. We do have supports within Vancouver Coastal Health to help our teams. And so that support and education is happening. I wouldn't say that the engagement is as robust as the Indigenous focus. And I think that really has been because of the information that we have and the desire to be more Indigenous focused, giving the disproportionate need. So I would say there's a predominant focus there, and we are addressing the other equity-seeking groups through our equity, diversity, and inclusion training.
So there's some questions talking about how this was a bit of the vanguard of a new model that would incorporate more health and mental health support. And the initial sort of calls or criticisms of this measure were, oh, you haven't hired enough. And I realized that we are on a track to hire up to 58, it looks like, during this year. The original promise is 100. Do we need 100, or are we going to be able to concentrate our efforts once we are fully staffed here? on the 58?
I think it's one of those things where we have to see, again, questions where is this enough? Is this going to meet the need? And I think, like anything that we've embarked on, some of us have done this for a long time. You get the budget that you get, you create the teams within that budget, you continue to evaluate, and if you feel as though we're just scratching the surface, then it's incumbent upon us to be able to present proposals for expansion. So I think it's a bit too early to tell if 58 is enough.
Great, thank you. Just going back to the questions around the interaction with the Ministry of Mental Health and Addictions, Ministry of Health. I know they are evaluating. Do you think I would like to get a sense of their kind of level of enthusiasm for this right now from basically your conversations? Obviously, good results, diverted calls, all those things must make them feel like we're making good progress.
Yeah, and I would reinforce that they're quite excited and interested. So they are looking at all of the metrics that we have gathered to date around our impact. Some of the effort that we have made, so I know the term proof of concept was used, but embedding the nurses in the response with the police, I don't think, Fiona, that's been done anywhere else, probably in North America. We are really on new ground in our approach. It wasn't actually conceptualized when we started this journey a year ago, but the profound impact of that, you can see what's going on as far as having a mental health response for people in crisis, which is the whole goal of this. So I do think that is what is really getting people's attention, and I think that is the things that we are going to be able to continue to evolve and shift as we go around how we are actually meeting the need and shifting what resources we think we need to put in place versus what we are seeing is actually making a profound difference to the system.
Mm-hmm. Some of the early metrics like that 73% or the 54% diverted calls and all the, that seems to me a really great number. It stands out. I'm glad you brought it. Are you all feeling pretty good about where this program is going right now?
Very much, and I think it brings the question, as I Bonnie mentioned, we don't have nurses on all the shifts. So we need to look at that as well. And, we have to be nimble enough to think about what FTEs we have, what is making the most profound impact. That's certainly a profound impact that we might want to shift more resources to in this process.
Quick question. We have car 7, car 88. We're getting 2 more cars. What are they called?
They're the same. I think we call them the same thing.
Are they not 85 and 86?
No.
Saved by the bell.
I'm not sure how they're
we have a second
differentiating
round. So, Councillor Carr.
Thanks very much, and just echo my colleagues' deep appreciation for the work that you're doing in handling this crisis. My first question is around the statement you made that we are now, I'm quoting you, now embedding nurses to triage 911 calls and divert them as mental health calls. Forgive me, I haven't called 911 in a long time. Is it still only police, fire, ambulance? And how do people get to be diverted as a mental health call?
I'm definitely going to ask my colleague to answer this one.
Good morning, everyone. Fiona Wilson, Deputy Chief of the Vancouver Police Department. So the way it works is that when somebody places a 911 call, it gets dispatched as it normally would, and it ends up on our call board. And then the mental health nurse in our operational command center, which is just down the street at 2120 Cambie Street, actually triages it right from our board. So we would love to envision a day in the future when somebody calls 911 and the answer is police, fire, ambulance, mental health. But knowing that that was a long way off, this is an alternative to that by triaging once it actually gets to our call board.
Do you think that you're losing some calls by virtue of the fact that if yours is the pathway through to this new service, that some people will be very reluctant to say police?
I think we are certainly getting the most serious calls come through,
Right.
but there's definitely, a segment of calls that would maybe go to non-emergency, for example, or people just not calling at all because they are concerned about the prospect of getting a police response as opposed to a mental health response, for sure.
Right. I don't know if you've got any intel on how fast we can get 911 to change it. It's been a long time discussion at the UBCM, for example. Where are we on that road to getting police, fire, ambulance, mental health?
So I don't think that that's something that we can anticipate coming on board in the near future. I know that ECOM is still struggling with respect to answering the phone in a timely manner on the non-emerge calls for sure. So there's other things I think to sort out with ECOM before we can anticipate that they could add that additional service.
Okay, we can keep pushing. Thanks. Second question related to the transportation of people that you mentioned to appropriate facilities. So I'm assuming that the Road to Recovery sort of new program at St. Paul's is a really, many of us visited, it's a really great option. What are the other options?
I think it depends on what the individual's need is. And so, I think the road to recovery is along the addiction continuum. And within that, we also have, can't call it detox anymore. That's what the term was, but withdrawal management and stabilization. So we do have that option. We've got several spaces for that, and we have stabilization. We have addiction treatment facilities. We have teams in the community that are able to support people on an outpatient basis. So there's quite a bit in that area. And then from people who are predominantly needing mental health support, we have many options. I think that in some situations, depending on the severity, individuals do go to what we call designated facilities. That's the legal requirement, which is typically a hospital, to be assessed. But then once they're assessed, they may have an inpatient stay, but we have teams in the community. We have mental health teams. We have assertive community teams. We have supported housing. So we do have many options for individuals in both areas.
Sufficient?
That's a tough question. I think that we're always looking for new options and opportunities, and I think that that's something that we've again done an amazing partnership with, both with the city and BC Housing, in looking at what's required. I do think housing, shelters, housing, adequate supports, I think it really is a partnership around that. And I do know that we're constantly evaluating and looking for new opportunities to expand and create more options.
Okay, last question, but you might have to might have to get on the list again for you to actually forget it. I've got 15 seconds to even ask the questions.
Okay, all right.
I'll get back on the list. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Boyle.
Thanks, and I'll echo the thanks to all of your teams for this work. It's always good to get the updates. I also am interested in the fourth option for 911, so appreciate that answer and any shared advocacy that we can be doing together and moving that forward, I think would be great. And I appreciate it, as others commented on, the call diversion numbers. I'm wondering what else could be done. Are we diverting all the calls we could be diverting, or how can we see even more success on that front?
Yeah, there's a few things that I'll just comment on around that. I think with this pilot, and again, it is a pilot, it's relatively new. I think this is our opportunity to make the case, right? So I think that let's just keep that on our radar and our ability to be, showing that this is something that could really help. I think the other opportunity for quote unquote diverting calls, there are a lot of calls that happen that don't go through the 911 system. So there are a lot of our partners who do know about the CAR 87 and 88 and are going straight there. And now with the moderate de-escalation team, we are working with the housing providers, shelter providers, and community providers to actually reach out to that team directly. So we do feel that those will be diverting calls as well. It's just we're still kind of early stages, but I think in those areas, and as those services grow, as we develop more partnerships, as we expand and offer that to more housing providers and shelter providers, I think that we'll see that they are phoning that line and they're phoning that team as opposed to phoning 911.
Okay. To begin with, will service providers and residents be able to access mode both through a direct line to mode and through a 911 call that would go to VPD and then be diverted to mode?
I think what has been happening is that mode has been referred to through that diversion of that nurse. So, the call comes through, and I think that they have been able to send some referrals through to mode to respond. And we'll track both of those routes that calls get to mode in terms of how we're evaluating. Yeah. Okay. I see nodding from Bob. I was assuming so, but I just have to have my rear view mirror up. Yeah. Good. I'm glad to hear that. As part of that tracking and evaluating, and I don't know how you would do this, but that's why I'm asking you. Can we get an estimate of cost savings? I'm assuming the diversion of calls, both when they're able to be addressed by the nurse on the phone and sending civilian response instead of police response, saves time as well as money. Are we tracking any of those cost estimates too? I don't think we're formally. I think it helps make a strong case. Absolutely, yeah. I don't think we're necessarily going down to the financial piece. The VPD may, okay, the VPDR, yep, there you go. And I think within the health system that it often gets tricky about avoiding something and hard to track if we avoided something. So did we avoid a hospitalization? Did we avoid an emergency room a visit? So sometimes that's a bit hard for us to track. But if we are able to get to that information and know that we definitely did avoid a hospital admission, we can look at the financials. It's always a challenge for us because it's not like we can close that bed to release that money somewhere else. If it reduces wait times or crowding, I think it's useful information. I think that's something that we always take a look at. It's always a little bit tricky. So sorry, Caitlin wants to add something.
I'm just going to add one thing to that because I've been asked this question before about the cost savings, and I think it will be an interesting analysis, and I think we can do it. But I just also want to frame it that the more important piece of this is that it's the most appropriate response. So you're going to save 2 VPD officers by calling out a team that's also nurses. It's also a resourced team. So it might financially all be in the wash, kind of, but at the end of the day, the most appropriate response has gone out for that individual, which I'm hoping we can remember as the kind of the goal.
Totally, absolutely. Best outcomes. Great. I have one more question, but I'm also almost out of time. It's short, and I'll go back on the list. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councillor Montague.
Yeah, thanks. I was listening to the presentation and hopped on the list to speak and realized I was very late to the race here. I want to ask a little bit about the OCC. It took CARD 7 and CARD 8 have been around for almost 40 years now. Everyone talks about how wonderful the programs are. It took a long time to get those better funded and better resourced. The OCC is obviously not at 24/7 right now. What's it going to take to get it 24/7? Are those conversations happening? The OCC itself is relatively new for the police department as well. So I'm just wondering kind of what is taking place because clearly 54% call diversion is a validation of the action taken. So I'm wondering what sort of timeline potentially could we see 24-hour cycle there?
I don't think we have a timeline for that. I think that we want to continue to evaluate the information. I think typically what our process is we can look at internal resources and if there's something that we can shift. I think in order to staff something 24/7 with nurses, takes a significant number of FTE and people and funding. So what we typically do is we would take this information back, we would build a bit of a business case, we would talk about what it would take, we would see if we could fund it internally. If we can't fund it internally, we would often put a proposal together and submit it to the province. So I don't think we have a timeline, but I'll just look behind me and just double check.
Hopefully it's not 40 years.
No, I just to add, I think that we also know that there are peak times where the calls are coming in. And so really, I think I'm going to jump, Fiona, if you disagree, let me know. Our goal would really probably be to staff the peak call times first as a primary goal. The car right now, car 87, also only operates in limited hours through the day. It's not 24 hours. We actually had it expanded into later hours in the morning and there wasn't the same business. So we do have that history and that pattern, and we can continue to work off that and really target the core bang for our buck on this one.
Okay, and maybe you could also expand a little bit more on how important it is in information sharing process to embed, instead of having, say, a separate 911 service for mental health, actually embedding them within the police for information sharing.
I'm wondering, Robert, maybe.
Hi, I'm Robert Bush. I'm the Director for Acute and Urgent Services, which includes all of our police embedded programs. So the question around, well, first of all, I would like to say that as we ramp up, so as Bob has mentioned, we are having those discussions about increasing the amount of time that we can have these services. But the labor shortage and the specific expertise that we require for these positions is something that takes longer to recruit. So that's where we're really focusing our energy.
And as far as the information sharing that goes on within the OCC itself, how important is that? Like, rather than health and police operating.
So it's essential. So when a call comes in, I'll start off by talking about the car. We actually have to have the police information. We have a memorandum of understanding, so we can share information between health and the police system. But we actually need to know both sides of what information is out there as our staff go into these situations. So that sharing of information is paramount in everything that we're doing.
And my last question revolves around some of the thoughts that were brought up about the 911, police, fire, ambulance, mental health. And I'm wondering if someone could elaborate, and I don't know if it's Coastal Health or VPD would be best to answer this, but when a 911 call comes in, this is sort of a point of last resort, and the challenges of asking a 911 caller to triage instead of having the professionals do it.
A great question. So I think ideally you would have both. So you could have an option at ECOM where there's a mental health professional who could triage some of those calls, and some of them ultimately are going to land on our call board and then get triaged again at the VPD and the OCC. So you make the great point that for those calls that are end up on our call board, at the end of the day, there is an intersection between police and perhaps a history of violence, or there's a reason why it ends up on our board, but also mental health. So it's the ideal space in terms of information sharing and appropriate resourcing. But there's a whole host of other mental health calls that could be diverted at ECOM through mental health services that maybe don't require a police response in the first instance. So ideally, I think you would have both options.
Awesome. And sorry, we're over time, but I'll take it off your next 5 minutes. Councillor Fry.
Thanks. And thanks for the presentation and bringing the whole team out here today. Appreciate a lot of this work and what's being put forward. Also appreciate that it's, as the name suggests, it's a crisis response. And so a response is by nature sort of reactive. I'm curious where the opportunities for proactive approaches here are, so that we're not dealing with folks who are in crisis, but we're getting to them kind of before they get to the point of crisis. So I'm thinking, like I know the Cahoots program had people just driving around, just doing just regular check-ins before people were in crisis, making sure they were okay if they needed any services, those kind of pieces. Drop-in type situations like the Junction, where kind of pure lead. So is that part of this packet, or is there work going on in that space through this work?
I would say it's not a part of this package, but I think it's something that we're aware of all the time. And I do think that the partnerships that we have with the community providers, both housing, shelter, and community service providers, I think that that's really important, that they're feeling supported, that they that they have the information that they need, that they've got the training that they need, and they've got the relationships where they can call on Vancouver Coastal Health if they do need something. I do think some of the drop-in spaces, we've had some of those conversations before. Some exist. Could we use more? Probably we could. And, that's always a tricky space for us to figure out. But I do think I would just leverage very much on the relationships we have with the providers. Caitlin reminds me, I drew something on my whiteboard once about the army of outreach workers and nonprofit service providers that we have in our community. And they really are the ones that are out there. They know the citizens, they know what their needs are, what they're connected to, what they aren't. So I think that's our opportunity. Outside of this project, Vancouver Coastal Health is also creating more outreach services, focusing on engaging with people who are homeless, people who are on the streets. So I think we're addressing this in multiple ways. I would say prevention and early intervention is always a tough one to address, but I really think we could capitalize on that army of the nonprofit sector.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to name because, as a longtime resident of the downtown east side, it's often referred to as a revolving door. And I see that as a lack of services up front. It's usually people who are in crisis because they don't have adequate housing or places to be or those supports in the first place. And I'm not saying that this is necessarily the funding that could even accommodate that, but it seems a big piece of this. I'm moving along then. One of the pieces in the motion that council passed was asking all the partners, not just Coastal Health, but to look at crisis respite facilities, so non-hospital locations where folks who are in crisis and have been successfully sort of de-escalated can kind of chill out. Is that work that's been going on with you at all?
I don't think that's something that this group has addressed.
Okay, it was in the motion and I don't know where it landed. It was definitely kind of directed to the partners and the province, but I think that's, again, something that we know that necessarily somebody in mental health crisis, putting them into a hospital involuntarily doesn't necessarily help the situation. I think as professionals, that. I think it's a piece of the conversation that needs to. Lastly, then I guess for me, and as part of the conversation that the public needs to hear, are there any public outreach tools that are being contemplated through this? So, for instance, I unsuccessfully tried to introduce a motion in the last term following some models that BIAs like the Yonge Street BIA in Toronto have been doing, which works with local businesses and says, here's how, as community members, if you find somebody sleeping in your doorway or if somebody in crisis comes into your store, here are some de-escalation thoughts, techniques. Here's, how to identify it and maybe not assume that it's, hardcore police intervention, but maybe it's a mental health intervention. And the education being a part of it for the public, is that contemplated through this work at all?
I think it's a great idea. I don't think it's been a part of it to date, but I think that's something that we can take away. Oh, yep, Caitlin wants to add something.
Yeah, I love that idea too. And one of the things we have been able to do with this funding through the engagement, the community engagement dollars, and because we were talking to so many community partners about this, one of the clear pieces of feedback they gave us is, this is great, these additional services, but also we need more training and help. So these are the shelter and housing and community service organizations. So we actually have put on some joint trainings for those groups with part of these dollars through that community engagement piece to be able to increase the capacity. And I think we could look, with interest from council, we could look at expanding that to BIAs in the next year as well, if that was of interest.
Love to hear it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Bly.
Thanks very much. So there have been some questions today related to sort of triage response, BIAs, businesses, and that sort of thing. I happened to speak with the business owner in Chinatown, a senior, and she had an experience of somebody falling asleep or, unmovable in front of her door that she couldn't get out. And so I'm just curious, when I asked, did you consider calling police? She said, I don't have time to wait on the phone 2 to 3 hours. So I flagged someone sort of through the window to help her. So pretty can be risky, concerning, so just having to deal with that on her own, given everything. So I'm just curious, what could be, what are the response times we could expect from this program in the coming year that would be an improvement on that perception of the public, such that they're not even calling 911 when there are different programs now that could help?
Yeah, is it 911 or are you
I'm
thinking
looking
that some
for
other
a 2 to
response?
3 hour perception, which I think is a reality for many. Can we expect that to be improved? And if so, by how much? Recognizing it's anecdotal, but I mean, we could get into response times.
Yeah, certainly, we continue our advocacy with respect to the response times from ECOM, particularly on their non-emerge lines. And that's just advocacy that continues. And it's something that police leaders that are engaged with ECOM as a third-party provider are
But assuming
very,
it gets to your call board faster than that.
Sorry, could you say that again?
Assuming it gets to your call board faster than that,
Right.
in terms of actual police response and being able to manage that.
Okay, so everything that goes onto our call board is prioritized in terms of, if it's a matter that's ongoing, that's violent, and so we usually have 50 to 60 calls on our board, and it just depends on the time of day and other things that are going on in the city of
So
that.
this won't necessarily impact those types of issues.
No.
Okay, that's just good to know. My last question is around when will we know budget projections for 2025 as we start to sort of continue to build out this program?
I mean, my understanding is, I'm going to try to answer this, Caitlin. We are anticipating that we will use the entire budget. So that was 7.8 million, 7.9 million.
This year?
No, for 2025.
Into 2025, in addition to the budget ask in this report?
So, yes.
Yeah, okay. That's really helpful to know, and that's coming. And then my final question was, one of the concerns that was raised early on that was, I think, part of the discussion where this motion came forward was to address the concern Vancouver Coastal Health nurses had about responding to calls without some sort of police response or just their own sense of safety and security. How has that changed with this program so far?
Well, we have doubled the car response. So I think that that's probably where, and that's the partnership program where nurses and VPD are going together. And so the idea is that then this moderate de-escalation is actually for the situations that aren't at that heightened level, so that they would be able to go out, so that we have the option of referring to the car or this moderate de-escalation.
Okay.
So the response, I think, for the nursing concern is we've doubled the car.
Right, and therefore more supports with sort of dual response, so to speak.
They can respond to those calls that are appropriate to have the police presence.
Yeah. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. That's my time.
Thank you very much, Councillor Clausen.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that there's been an enormous amount of reporting around the growing mental health concerns. Is it, and I think this program is definitely a response to those growing needs. Was the sort of turning point the pandemic, from your own understanding? I'm sort of seeing a few heads nodding back there.
Yeah, I'm wondering if JJ might want to come up and comment on this. Dr. JJ Sidhu is, well, I'll let him introduce himself. I can't get the title right.
Hi, I'm JJ. So I'm the department head for psychiatry, Vancouver Community and Acute, medical director for mental health, substance use, Vancouver Acute, Tertiary, and Urgent Services. As the inceptions of the pandemic, we did do an internal rapid review of the literature, and it did anticipate a mental health surge. We know even with smaller crises in our society, such as the financial crisis, the fires up north, the floods in Calgary, there was quite a bit of mental health fallout that lasted years, and the COVID was unprecedented, and I think we're still dealing with it. It's impacted every aspect of our society. I think there was a reference earlier to youth and whatnot. We're seeing that. So definitely it's had an impact.
Excellent, thank you. I know that there was comments about it takes a special kind of person to do this kind of work. Who wants to do this kind of work, and why would they want to do it? Maybe could you elaborate a little bit on that for us?
Yeah, I'm going to make one addition to JJ, and then we'll go to that. I also just want to flag the toxic drug supply has also very much exacerbated the situation that we're dealing with.
Good to know. Thank you.
Okay. Robert. Okay.
I think you're making reference to the type of nurses who want to join, but similarly for the VPD, those officers have a particular interest in serving the population in this way and joining the mental health team. And Fiona, you can jump up in here if you want. But from the nursing perspective, what we find is that they tend to be experienced nurses who have worked in acute, they've worked in the emergency setting, so they have a wide berth of understanding of what is potentially out there. They tend to have worked in the community as well, so working in the downtown east side. So really strong understanding of what the issues are and a real vocation in this area. They really do want to do this work. So when we're recruiting, we will get lots of new graduates who will apply for our positions. But we're not able to really integrate them into the team because we really do need individuals who have that greater awareness and the sensitivity as you're walking into situations.
A question on recruiting. Is there anything that we can help to do to help the recruitment process in terms of communicating?
I don't have any, I'm not sure what would help at this point. I mean, we're constantly looking. We have many postings up there. It's really the labor shortage right across the country, and that's hitting every domain. Healthcare is no different. We are doing lots of recruiting right in the colleges, universities, to try to get to those new grads as soon as possible.
Thank you. Just given City of Vancouver's leadership on this file, are you hearing from other health authorities, either locally or across the country, and asking about this program?
Yeah, we have had our colleagues in other health authorities ask, and we do have opportunities at provincial tables to share. So yeah, there is some interest. We haven't gotten into a lot of the detail with other groups at this time, though.
Okay, well, thank you again for your presentation.
Great, thank you very much. Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Mayor. And just a couple more questions. I just wanted to circle back on the triage in particular. One of the things that we heard last term increasingly from the public was that they might see someone, observe someone who seemed to be in crisis. And there was that issue of, well, what do I do? And sort of again, back to 911, you have three options. Today, is that still the option for people of, I see someone who may be a harm to themselves or else, or to someone else, or they seem to be in crisis. Is it still to call 911 e-com and seek either paramedic or police depending on the circumstance? Is that the...
Yeah, I'm nodding my head because I think that is the appropriate call for someone who doesn't know an individual, doesn't know the situation, doesn't know the circumstance. I think it would be too much to expect them to, assess the situation. Is there a risk? So I do think having that as the primary call is the right thing at this time. Should something change, we'd have to explore that. But I think it's a lot to expect members of the public to discern different call structures.
Do you think, and I'm sorry if this was asked earlier, do you think there's an opportunity to do some public education around these services and what's being offered? So when people encounter a situation and they want to help, because by and large, I think most Vancouverites are compassionate and they see that we're dealing with a health issue. Is there any kind of opportunity for some sort of public awareness campaign around, these are new services that are being offered, you're still going to call this number, but there's ways that we can help individuals in a different way?
Yeah, I think that's a really great idea. And I think the lens that you're offering and has been talked about here is some people may be reluctant to call 911 because they don't want there to be a police response. So I think that there is an opportunity for us to be able to share that we do have other tools in the toolbox now. And when you call, that may not necessarily be the response, that there may be a different response that is appropriate.
Yeah, I think that would be great to see because I think it would give ease to people to make that call to try to help. Two more questions.
Sorry, I did give you an extra minute. I know you still have 4, but if it's okay, I'll jump to Councillor Carr and then Councillor Boyle.
We just reset to, because I think it was starting a new, this is a new second question round.
Yeah, no, you still have another, here, I'm going to stop the timer. You have another 4 minutes, but you've gone for
I think we're on the second round of
Oh,
questions.
you're on the second round. Sorry.
that's
All right. You know what? I stand corrected.
All good. I'll be
It's
I'll
okay
be
with
quick.
everyone. Just we'll let you keep going. How's that?
All good.
I was trying to be fair there, but I wasn't really.
All good. I just want to ask, in the context of, have there been conversations between VCH and the BC Crisis Center, as well as the 988 service, which is new, and just how those services might work together? Because I think a few of us have had meetings with the BC Crisis Center, and they're quite keen to contribute in a positive way. And I think they field quite a few calls and conversations taking place.
We have been collaborating with them, and it was actually when we presented the framework here where we were, that was one of the speakers. And so since that time, we've definitely been connecting with them and collaborating with them around their work. I don't know if you, not 988, not yet, but the crisis line, yes.
Great. And then my last question is around, in December, you provided an update, but I thought would be helpful in council, is around conversations taking place around peer-assisted care teams and the Canadian Mental Health Association, because again, similar to the de-escalation teams that you've put in place, and how that's going. What does that look like from your perspective?
Caitlin? Yep.
Yep, thanks for that. So we've had a number of conversations with Johnny Morris at the Canadian Mental Health Association about the PAC teams and expanding that to Vancouver. I think we have a meeting coming up with city staff and CMHA to really explore what's the right path in Vancouver. And I think that's a decision we're all going to have to make in the next year of, as we learn more about what our moderate crisis de-escalation can do within the 32 FTE we've been allotted. Like as Bonnie's talked to, we're doing this phased approach. We're going to see how much we can respond to with this team. And then I think we have to make a decision. Does it make sense to bring in another non-police crisis response team that does something similar but fundamentally different in the city? Or do we just want to have the one VCH run team? And I just think the jury's out. We don't have enough information. So right now we're just staying very closely connected, and we're trying to do a lot of learning alongside those teams because they're doing very similar work in other municipalities.
Thank you. That's all my questions.
And sorry about that. Right, Councillor Carr.
Thank you. Similar to Councillor Dominato, I wanted to pursue a bit more around the calls and how we make sure people know which number to call and feel comfortable around that number to call. So one question along those lines is, some people who may not feel comfortable, let's just say, saying responding police. If they, another logical choice for them might be ambulance. So are you working with people who are handling calls that go to ambulance so it's easy for that call to get transferred to the right person if it's in police?
So we have had a number of conversations with EHS. Our understanding is that once the ambulance is dispatched, they have to attend. Where we're hoping to partner really closely with them is once they've attended, if there's an opportunity there, if they assess that that person does not need to be transported to hospital, could they call the moderate de-escalation team instead to intervene at that point? So we have been working really closely with them to get that started. It hasn't started yet.
Okay. So there's an intermediary step there where the ambulance
I think they
has to
must attend.
Okay.
That's our understanding.
All right, that's good. And I really would support what Councillor Dominato was asking about, which is public education, to sort of ease people's concerns if they have them, but facilitate their right response in terms of what they push. Final question that I have is around the fact that great to see the doubling of cars, car 8788, but I noted that it was 7:30 a.m. to 11 p.m. Have you done any assessments around what calls might otherwise actually happen after 11 or between 11 p.m. and 7:30 in the morning? Are you assessing the demand or the need for the service to be extended into those hours?
Yeah, I'll just reiterate, I think what Bob had shared earlier is that we did have different hours and the utilization wasn't there. And so these did come up as the real peak and important hours to have that service available. We'll continue to, again, work with partners with the VPD to understand if at some point there is an increase in need, we can discuss what's the appropriate response. It may not be a car, it may be a consult service. So I think that we're always open to hearing about that, but that was looked at and these were viewed to be the peak hours.
Right. So what's your threshold for the number of calls that would need to happen between 11 p.m. and 7:30 a.m. to then prompt an expansion of service into those hours?
Don't know who could speak to a threshold. I don't know if we have necessarily a threshold. I think it's something that is just continually being evaluated, and whether or not that's something that we could justify the utilization of those resources at that time. And as I've indicated, it's not always the same tool in the toolbox, that if we can't justify having the car on the road and that response, there may be something else that we could be doing. So I think it's something that we would just continue to look at.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Okay, thank you again
Thank you.
for answering all the questions and for the work that you're doing.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, seeing no one else in the queue, so would someone like to move a motion? Great, moved by Councillor Klassen, seconded by Councillor Joe. Council, is there any discussion? Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, I will just be brief, and I just want to thank the Coastal Health team and our staff in shaping this approach. I think council did really identified the problem in terms of the challenges in our city, but provided an open funding envelope and trusted in kind of you going away and the experts doing their job and coming back on that. So it's been, I think, a good learning process for us to see what this looks like. It's encouraging to see some of the early results. Obviously, it's early, but I do think that hopefully with the thoughtful kind of measured response that we're going to see that. I know that sometimes there's often a lot of public dialogue around, well, you've hired up, close to the 100 police officers, not the 100 nurses. And there's an existing model for hiring police officers that's quite defined. And this is new and kind of forging new ground. So I think that it's being shaped as we go along. And I appreciate kind of the measured approach. And again, would just kind of reiterate my sincere interest in continuing to hear and learn and get regular updates. I think council's interested and I think the public is interested, and we're all going to learn a lot through this process. So I thank you and I really appreciate the work.
Thank you very much. Councillor Klassen.
Yeah, similarly, just brief remarks and again, appreciation to the team at Coastal Health and city staff and VPD for all the work they've been doing on this, bringing this together. These kinds of things are often a leap of faith, and if you're in the middle of an election campaign and you're developing platform promises, sometimes they may seem a little bit out there. But I think in this case, we took I think a bold step to try and make sure that we are trying to integrate the types of services with both law enforcement and healthcare to address what is a noticeable shift in what's happening out in the public, and as we talked about. Some of the changes that happened through the pandemic. So to see this now and to see the expertise that the health authority is bringing to this, the empathy that that all the workers, including the Vancouver Police Department, are putting into trying to support people in the community is it's very heartening. And I really look forward to sort of seeing how these investments bring some very tangible changes, both in terms of how people reach out for these kind of help when they need it, but also making sure that people are well taken care of in their most sort of critical times of need. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dominato.
Thanks, Mayor. And I'll echo the thanks to Vancouver Coastal Health and to Vancouver Police Department for the work on this collaboration. And I said earlier, I'm excited about this because last term I felt this was, it really rose to the top in some of the issues that we were hearing as councillors about the need to have a broader spectrum of services and supports offered in the city. I think we all recognized that there are times when you're going to need police, you're going to need law enforcement, but there are other times when you're not going to need that response and you need health professionals. And so for me, I feel like this is the win-win that we were looking for in terms of that integration of service, the working together, the collaboration. It was referenced the information sharing that's necessary. But one of the things I heard and really stood out for me today was that overarching is ensuring that the most appropriate response is delivered, and that really resonated for me. And I think this is what the public has been looking for. And I think there's an enormous opportunity to look at this and replicate. That's why I'm really interested in the evaluation, and then how that gets escalated to the province, and looking at this for other municipalities and working together. And so I just to underscore, I am thrilled to see this progress, and I think it's going to be better for the city, better for citizens, better for those in need. And so thank you for the really conscientious effort and in undertaking this work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Meisner.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and thanks so much for the update. I know we all appreciated hearing more about the progress, and I think it's a really thoughtful and phased approach that's informed by the experts. And I think when we were talking about the campaign, when we made the promise for 100 mental health nurses, I think you've really refined that to what's going to work on the ground with your expertise, and we're very grateful for that. I think most importantly, this is really changing the way we respond to these calls. So it's not a police response, it's a healthcare focused response. And I think everyone's in broad agreement that that's where we need to be, that these are healthcare issues and it really does need that healthcare response. So I am really excited to hear about all the developments, the expansion of CAR 87 and CAR 88. We all know there was huge demand for that, outsized demand for it previously. So to be able to double that is awesome. And also the triaging of calls and the diversion of the calls to your mental health support workers. That's really great to hear. And much like Councillor Dominato, I'm really encouraged to hear that the province is following this closely. And I'm really optimistic that this could serve as a model for other communities around the province, which I know are facing some of the same issues we are here in Vancouver. So great work, and thanks so much for the update today, and look forward to more regular updates as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Joe.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Also, I want to thanks all the appreciation from my colleagues. I think, working in the healthcare industry for the past 15 years with Fraser Health and PHSA, I'm really confident that we can leave this expert opinion to our frontline staff. And especially want to appreciate all the great work from the Vancouver Coastal as well as the frontline healthcare workers. And also very excited to see the progress in the past 1 year and also the plan moving forward. As we all mentioned, this is a groundbreaking initiative, and I'm really glad that Vancouver is taking the leadership again in this critical issue. Yeah, looking forward to collaborating with you to the push for the provincial government to be able to expand and probably fund the program across the province. Yeah, and also I'm really keen to see the evaluation results. And yeah, thanks you for everything. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Councillor Bly.
Thanks very much. I'll just keep my comments brief, but echoing the appreciation and commending that the work that has been done so far. And when we do anything new to this degree with the level of integration with two very separate authorities, with the VPD and Vancouver Coastal Health, to have done that work in such an incredibly impactful and positive way right out of the gate leaves me feeling for sure very hopeful, and that this is, in terms of short-term funding and pilot, it's money well spent to get that proof of concept. So that being said, of course, this is a national crisis. Every single municipality, community, large and small, are being hit by these challenges right now. I've talked to city councillors in Montreal. I know they're following this very closely and have been since the last election, and seeing this as a campaign promise by ABC and then seeing that that's being delivered and also that it's having positive results is very interesting, I think, to large cities across the country. So being a national crisis, of course, then provinces need to recognize that they need to get on board. And so I believe that we have a province in BC, a provincial government that is absolutely at the table in this conversation, but because of the level of integration between health and first responders, police response, I can understand why we've had to take the lead as a city. It's not the first file that the City of Vancouver stepped out on in terms of being the first and leading, but perhaps one of the most impactful and important in terms of residents' day-to-day lives when it comes to the mental health and addictions crisis. So as I said, I'm super hopeful for the progress that has been made so far and the future of this program. And certainly look forward to future updates and continuing to see the province at the table as this program evolves. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Boyle.
Thanks, and I'll echo that thank you as well. Really glad to see to hear updates on this. In particular, as others have said, the call diversion numbers are really strong, and I look forward to how we continue that. And as was articulated, to make sure that we're sending the right response to each call. The most appropriate response, the most impactful response. I know we get asked about the cost, and so I'm glad to hear that we're tracking that. And I really appreciated the response that the priority is making sure that we're sending the right experts, sending the right folks. I am looking forward to. I understand the pace we're growing at, and I'm looking forward to expanding the capacity of that service, whether it's through Mode or whether it's in a partnership in some way with PAC teams. I continue to hear about the success of the PAC teams in other parts of the province, as well as hearing success stories out of Toronto about what their civilian-led response teams are doing. And again, the significant call diversion and improved outcomes that they're seeing there. And lastly, just appreciate the work being done and around, or the shared advocacy that we could do around a fourth option, and the importance of easy pathways to be getting the right response. I know when I talk to people in the community, and certainly when I worked in frontline social services in across the city, I hear from people regularly how hard it is for them to know the whole slew of different phone numbers that they should call in any different crisis. So ensuring it's as easy as possible for any resident who doesn't have a background in this work to be of help in making sure that the right call is arriving, I think obviously continues to be important. So look forward to more work on that front. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fry.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Thanks for everybody coming out and the work ongoing. This is, opening a whole new possibility. And I think as Councillor Dominato alluded and stuff, we really became acutely aware of this in the last term, and we're unable to move the dial in any kind of meaningful way. And obviously mental health was a massive crisis then citywide. As a longtime resident of the downtown east side, I've seen these manifestations and I see the cycles and stuff. So I am still sort of cognizant of that proactive approach that needs to happen, because I appreciate that this is a great response, but we need to get ahead of this in ways I think that are still eluding this presentation. I appreciate that it's outside the scope. I also am somewhat disappointed. I'm super happy with everything, but I'm a little disappointed that the crisis respite piece isn't in there as well, because there was some direction that we'd given through the amended motion, and I think that is an important piece to this as well, is the proactive and the non-medical kind of response and opportunities to kind of level set for folks who are in crisis or who are marginalized. But on the whole, I'm super happy with this direction. And I think that there's an important takeaway, because I need to name that this is what folks would arguably say is, what did they say? It's outside the scope of core jurisdiction, is how the budget task force had framed this kind of thing. And I think that I recognize that this is not in our normal funding packet for the city of Vancouver. And so I think that I know that this is money well spent in the right direction. And I think that there is that sort of evidence-based kind of, like, we need to show the proof of the work, right? And show why this is a good idea, to thwart those critics in the future who, say, well, Vancouver, stick to your knitting, put some guardrails up, stick to core jurisdiction. This isn't core jurisdiction, obviously, but it is addressing, I think, a lot of downstream costs for, policing and street cleaning and all the other kind of things that we have to kind of fill in the blanks on. And I want to add that value lens to this work that's beyond just the humanistic kind of compassionate response to folks who are in crisis, but also recognizing, hey, this makes financial sense for the money that we're spending as a city when the critics come and say, hey, stick to your knitting, Vancouver. So thank you for showing up. Thank you for the work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carr.
Yeah. Just echoing a lot of my colleagues here. I really believe that as elected officials at the civic level, it's still our duty to be concerned about and trying the best to care for the health and well-being of people within the city. I think this is in our jurisdiction. It may not be officially in terms of health being a more senior government thing, but it's citizens, it's people who live in this city, and we ought to be concerned. And so I appreciate this initiative. It's obviously a better response. It's well coordinated. It has better outcomes, and just we need more. So thank you for the work to do it. Our son is a mental health nurse, so I'm acutely aware of the pressures and the strain on those workers. And I really hope senior governments are focused on the need to fund more training, to get more healthcare professionals who are in the position to be able to help on this crisis, because this crisis has escalated over the years I've been on council. It's just gotten worse and worse. And this is a really positive move. I'm seeing a very positive dynamic out of it in terms of responding to people in need. But the crisis itself is ginormous. I really, I do hope to see senior governments weigh in. We do need more trained professionals. We do need more care beds and care facilities of a variety of types. And, we can do our bit, but this is a very collaborative approach. And you're showing that it is that collaborative approach. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, so I'm not going to repeat everything that was said here. A lot of things were said. I just want to say thank you. Thank you for the incredible work that everyone has done on this file. You are making a difference, and you're approaching it with kindness and compassion, and it's a heavy lift. So I just, on behalf of all of us, thank you. It's appreciated, and it's totally recognized. All right. Seeing no one else in the queue, I'm now I'm now going to call a vote. Clerk, can you please take us to the voting screen? And council, can you please register your vote on the voting panel? All right. It's not a surprise. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Great. So thank you, by the way. Okay, so moving along, new business. We have one item of new business on the agenda today, which is a request for, sorry? Oh, did I miss the bylaws? Hold on a sec. Oh, it looked like it was crossed out, sorry. It's a good thing some of us are on top of it here. All right, we have 6 bylaws on the agenda for enactment. Would someone like to move a motion to adopt bylaws 1 through 6? Councillor Bly had her hand up first. Councillor Carr, sorry. Seconded. Council, is there any discussion? No. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great, the motion carries unanimously. The list of the approved bylaws can be found on the city's website. So notice of council member motions. Are there notices of council member motions for the upcoming standing committee meetings? Reminder, hold on a sec, make sure. Reminder to please state the title of the motion and the date of the standing committee meeting on which you intend to move the motion. And be sure to send the title and date of the standing committee meeting via email to the city clerk. And I see no one in the queue. Is that correct? All right. So back to where I skipped to, new business. We have one item of new business on the agenda today. Request for leave of absence as follows. For Councillor Joe for civic business from meetings on February the 7th from 1 to 5 p.m. Would someone like to move a motion? Great. Thank you, Councillor Meisner, seconded by Councillor Carr. Council, is there any discussion? All those in favor say yay. Yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. The motion carries unanimously. Council, are there any other items of new business? Councillor Kirby-Young.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. This is our last council meeting before we enter into the Lunar New Year celebrations this coming weekend. And it is Year of the Dragon, which reputedly, although I'm sure some of the other signs would argue, is supposed to be one of the best possible outcomes for a person with fame and fortune coming the way of folks that are lucky enough to be born under this auspicious sign, especially when surrounded by the colors of silver and gold. But I also wanted to acknowledge that this is historically the 50th anniversary of the parade in Chinatown, which is a beloved festival, and hoping, knock on wood, for good weather this weekend. And I know it was really missed when we didn't have a chance to do that during the pandemic. So I wanted to give a shout out to all of the organizers that are working hard to put that parade on, and looking forward to a full day of, or a whole weekend, I should say, of festivities, including the Chinatown Foundation and a number of the other cultural institutions in Chinatown that have a lot of fun activities going on. So hopefully everybody will have a chance to go out and enjoy that. Thanks.
Great, thank you very much. And I just want to state for the record, my brother was not born in the year of the dragon, so it's an inside joke. That is never funny, but it's on film.
But you were, but I heard rumor you were at the first parade, though.
Yeah, I was.
There you go.
No, seriously, I was. My parents took me to every single one. Councillor Joe.
Yeah, on a similar note, also about Lunar New Year. So yeah, this Saturday is Lunar New Year, the Year of Dragon, as Councillor Kirby mentioned. I think Lunar New Year is resonant deeply and celebrated by many Asian community in the city of Vancouver, including Chinese, Korean, Vietnamese, Singaporean, Malaysian, and many others. Yeah, I think my rough estimation, more than 1/3 of the residents in city of Vancouver celebrate Lunar New Year. It's very significant. Yeah, as Councillor Kirby mentioned, this Year of Dragon is very significant to the community. It's a symbol of power, luck, good health, strength, and good fortune. So yeah, so also the 50 years anniversary for the Lunar New Year parade. And also, I'm really proud of celebrating the Lunar New Year with everyone, with different communities in city of Vancouver in Canada. The celebration represents our cultural diversity and serve as a reminder of all the beauty of embracing cultural heritage. Yeah, just want to wish everyone who celebrate Lunar New Year a very joyous Lunar New Year and filled with prosperity, happiness, love, and 恭喜发财，新年快乐. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Councillor Joe. So inquiries and other matters. Council, are there any inquiries or other matters? Seeing no one in the queue, can we please have a motion to adjourn? All right, Councillor Kirby-Young, seconded by Councillor Fry. All those in favor say yay. All those opposed say nay. Great. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone. 1 o'clock for in camera.